Good morning and welcome to Prayerful Flow in our virtual yoga studio. I'm Christy Roshong and I teach the Prayerful Flow Sunday morning class at Namaste Yoga Studio in Northfield. So wanted to tell you a little bit about this class if you haven't joined us already. So we do read sacred scripture for the first part of class. You'll hear a passage twice and then we'll go through some movement together. And then at the end of the class, since it is Lent, we will be doing a guided prayer meditation with the Examine prayer. So I found one that is specifically for the mornings. So like I said, this class is usually in the morning, but if you are practicing sometime during the day, you can just adjust your thoughts for that. Also, some people like to use a journal during the class if you're feeling particularly inspired during prayer. So if you would like that, feel free to pause the video and go ahead and grab one. Then just in terms of transitioning into our reading this morning, I would invite you to take the posture of supported fish. So I'm going to give you some different options for that. If you have yoga blocks with you, you can begin by placing one block long ways so that it comes just in between the top of your shoulder blades, not all the way down to your middle of your back. And then the back one you're going to put at mid height, and then the back of your head will come and rest on that. So supported fish, you're extending your legs long on the mat, finding that place for the block to rest between your shoulder blades, and then adjusting the other block so the back of your head is resting on that. And if you'll notice, it just lifts your heart, and then you can extend your arms out to the side, keeping your legs long. And it's just a really good heart opener and posture of surrender. Now, if you don't have blocks, another option for you, or if you would like this to be more of a restorative pose, you can simply roll up a blanket. Could be as fluffy or as thin as you want it, and you're just going to roll it up so maybe about a 2 to 3 feet length, and place it on your back, and then bring your sacrum towards the bottom of it, laying down and resting. And again, you get some lift across your heart that way. So take a moment to get into the posture that's comfortable for you and begin to find your breath. If neither of those options for supported fish are sounding inviting to you this morning, you also have the option for just a traditional Shavasana coming onto your back. Since we are moving into Holy Week and it is Palm Sunday, we are thinking about the notion of surrender and sacrifice, which is especially compelling at this Lenten season during this pandemic. So whatever posture you're in, I invite you to ease into your breath and maybe extend your arms to your sides and just think about the notion of sacrifice and surrender. I'll begin our reading. You're going to hear it twice, and the first time I invite you to just simply listen. We're going to be reading the Passion. Obviously, if you go to Mass, you know that that's a very long chapter. We're not going to be doing that for the yoga class, but just the section, the end of Matthew chapter 27 and the end of the Lord's Passion. So first time around, I invite you to simply listen. From noon onward, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, Why have you forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders who heard it said, "This one is calling for Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran to get a sponge. He soaked it in wine and, putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, "Wait, let us see if Elijah comes to save him." But Jesus cried out again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked, rocks were split, tombs were opened, and the bodies of many saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming forth from their tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. The centurion and the men with him who were keeping watch over Jesus feared greatly when they saw the earthquake and all that was happening, and they said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." This time I'm going to begin the same reading a second time, and I invite you to notice any words or phrases that are catching your attention. And if the word or phrase that is catching your attention, notice if it is something that's bringing you comfort or consolation, or notice if it's something that's challenging you or bringing out some kind of resistance. And if it's one of those two things, I simply ask you to ask God to soften your heart around that, because that's the Holy Spirit at work too. So perhaps offering any words or phrases that catch your attention up into prayer, petition, or gratitude this morning. From noon onward, darkness came over the whole land until about 3 p.m. And at about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders who heard it said, "This one is calling out for Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran to get a sponge. He soaked it in wine and, putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, "Wait, let us see if Elijah comes to save him." But Jesus cried out again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked, rocks were split, tombs were opened, and the bodies of many saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming forth from their tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. The centurion and the men who were with him, who were keeping watch over Jesus, feared greatly when they saw the earthquake and all that was happening. And they said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Take a deep breath in and a long breath out, letting any words or phrases that came to you while we read settle, noticing if any new words or phrases are coming to you now, and simply offer them up as your prayer of petition, gratitude, praise, maybe sealing them as an intention for your practice this morning. Notice the quality of your breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. When you're ready, if you have any props that you're using for supported fish, blankets or blocks, begin removing them. And gently roll over onto your belly. So coming all the way onto your belly, I'm going to keep my head up to talk and give you directions, because when I put my head down on the mat, it muffles my voice. So come all the way onto your belly, bringing your forehead down to the mat, extending your arms long out overhead, keeping your forearms on the floor, but then turning your palms open. So your forehead is down on the mat, your palms are open, and begin to take in a long inhale, picturing the breath entering your lungs, opening up the back of your heart. Inhaling in praise, exhaling, noticing how you feel on your mat, keeping energy active through your legs, from the tips of your toes to the tips of your fingers, extending across your open palms, feeling though you're in a place of both deep surrender, deep gratitude, and deep praise. Turn your palms back to release them to the floor. Begin to draw your elbows in towards your rib cage, keeping your forearms on the mat and palms open. Draw your heart and chest up into Sphinx pose, softening into a gentle backbone, back bend, keeping your gaze down your nose. Isometrically drawing your shoulders back, drawing your elbows towards your rib cage. Passively breathing into this gentle back bend. Take a long inhale and use your exhale to release your forehead back to the mat, extending your arms out to a T. So from here, begin to draw your left arm in toward your rib cage, and then gently use the strength of your left arm to help your body roll slowly onto your right shoulder for a shoulder stretch. You may have to adjust yourself on your mat. So I'm rolling into the coffee table behind me. Maybe even bringing a bend to your left knee, placing the sole of your left foot behind your right leg, keeping energy and activity in your right leg, letting your right temple rest on the mat. And using your breath to ease the stretch and ease your body into this pose. Then just as gently and gracefully as you got into the pose, if your left leg is bent, go ahead and extend it long. Begin to return your hips square to the mat. Release your left arm long. Maybe bring some gentle shoulder circles as a counter pose to that stretch. And turn your head, turn your gaze towards your right arm. And again, I'm gonna turn for the sake of instructional purposes, but you can stay right where you are. So turning your gaze towards your right arm, you're gonna set up for a shoulder stretch on the opposite side. So drawing your right arm in toward your rib cage, keeping your left arm extended long, just beginning to use the strength of your right arm to roll yourself onto your left shoulder. Again, option to bend your right knee to deepen the posture. Noticing how this side may feel different from the opposite side. Remember to keep breathing and remember to keep your left leg active. On your next inhale, release your leg long. Gently unwind the twist, coming back onto your belly. Maybe shrugging your shoulders as a counter pose. And then when you're ready, bring your toes together, begin to lift your hips and sink your hips back to come either into a puppy dog or a child's pose. So if you're coming into child's pose, your toes are coming together and your knees are wide. And just lowering your feet, bringing your hips back, extending your arms long. Noticing your breath, breathing, sending your breath into your back of your heart, the back of your lungs. And then when you're ready, from wherever you are, either puppy or child's pose, just lift your head up gently enough to take kind of a long thread the needle. So extending, bringing strength into your right arm. Just gently raise your left arm and tuck it under your right. Gently resting your left temple on the earth, maybe even walking your right arm to the corner of your mat, and then sinking your hips back to wherever they need to be to feel a stretch really along your left side body as well as your right. And take a long inhale and a long exhale, just feeling the breath across within your side body. On an inhale, begin to use the strength of your right hand to release your left hand, bringing it back to center, maybe stretching back just for a brief puppy dog or child's pose. And then on an inhale, you're going to take the stretch with the opposite. So again, rotating so that you can see, but coming down to thread the needle with your right arm underneath your left, bringing your right temple to the earth and sinking your hips back to whatever is comfortable. Keep breathing. So on your next inhale, begin to rise, bringing your chest up, bringing your right arm up, maybe extending it long as a counter stretch, then returning your right hand to meet your left and just pausing in child's pose or puppy for a quick moment. And then when you're ready, we'll meet in hands and knees. Coming into a tabletop pose, setting up, checking in, making sure we're distributing our weight evenly across our left side and our right side, pressing into the palms of our hands, looking to see our shoulders are in line with our wrists, and our hips are over our knees, our core is engaged, our spine is long, and our gaze is down. Toes can be either curled or flat. Pause here for a breath. And then on an inhale, begin to engage your core, lift your right leg, begin to draw it through your center. I know what I'm trying to say here. And drawing your right foot around the outside of your right hand. So coming into a lizard pose. I'm actually going to turn forward so you can see what I'm doing, since my body was going into the pose faster than my words were. So this is where usually when we draw through, we're coming into a lunge like this. But for lizard, we're bringing our hands to the inside of our right foot. We're hugging the top of our bicep into our knee. Option to kind of open more deeply by coming onto the pinky toe edge of your right foot. Wiggling your left leg back, your left knee back as far as what's comfortable for you to wake up your hip flexor this morning. And again, it's early in the practice, so this is really a gentle stretch at this point. So you have the option to come on to blocks or come on to forearms. I am not that open yet this morning, so the point of the pose is to really just wake up your hip flexor, feeling the deep stretch in your inner thigh. Breathing. On your next inhale, begin to draw your right knee back to meet your left, coming back into a tabletop pose and taking a round of cat and cow, just to kind of rinse out the pose, maybe even taking three-legged table to extend your right leg long, maybe pointing and flexing your foot, maybe bending your leg, just something as a counter pose to lizard. And then returning to hands and knees to set up for lizard on the opposite side. So again, coming into table, on an inhale, begin to draw your left knee forward to plant your foot and frame the outside of your left hand. There, those directions were a little more clear on this side. We're waking up this morning. Wiggle your right knee back so that it's to a place that's comfortable for you to begin to stretch your right hip flexor, keeping your core engaged, remembering to breathe, keeping energy into both your right and left hand, so you're not dumping into one or the other. Remembering to breathe. Option to lower onto forearms or blocks if that's calling to you this morning, if you're super open. Remembering to draw your heart forward. We don't want to collapse into this pose, but keeping our heart open and strong. After your next full round of breath, begin to draw your left leg back to meet your right into a table pose. Again, take a round of cat and cow to release the stretch, and then do something as a counter stretch for your legs. So whether that's coming into a three-legged table or doing some hip circles with your left leg. And then when you're ready, return your right leg to meet your left. And we'll sink back into another child's pose. So toes come together, knees wide, drawing your heart forward. Chest comes onto the mat. Hands can return to that posture of surrender where our palms were open to the sky, or you can bring your hands to prayer over the top of your head. And just as we've begun some movement this morning, bring to mind your intention. Again, just let it maybe rest or settle. Notice how your breath has changed since we've begun some movement. Any distracting thoughts, any feelings coming up, I invite you to notice them, but then let them pass and wash away. And then when you're ready, we'll meet again in hands and knees. So gently making your way, coming into tabletop. Bring your hand forward, one handprint. Keep your shoulders aligned with your wrists. If your toes are flat on the mat, uncurl them, lift your knees, and come into a plank pose. Always an option to release your knees for a modified plank. You still get the same benefits of the pose, engaging your core, keeping your gaze down. If you're in a full plank pose, go ahead and release to your knees. And then slowly begin to come onto, bring the weight into your right hand, opening up your shoulder, dropping your right knee, keeping your left foot planted on the mat so that the pinky toe edge is aligned with the side edge of your mat, opening up for a modified side plank. You can also kickstand your knee so it's more coming behind you, but opening up so you have a long line of energy from your right hand, which is rooted in the earth, to your left fingertips, which are extended towards the sky. Keep your left leg active, really rooting into your mat with the sole of your foot, and breathe. Notice the heart opening. take an inhale, and then on your exhale, begin to lower your hips onto the mat so that the sole of your right foot is coming into your left inner thigh. Release your right hand from the mat, and then take a side body stretch with your right hand, just moving in the opposite direction. So opening up the side body, stretching your right hand towards your left legs. Left toes are flexed. Breathing. Again, noticing if your body is tending to collapse in, and just trying to keep your heart open. And then on an inhale, begin to come back to center. We're going to come back into that side plank pose. So planting our right hand, coming up on our right knee, coming back into that side plank, and this time extending our left arm long, sweeping it over our heads, coming into a longer side body stretch, really feeling reaching from both sides. So really rooting your left foot into the earth and reaching with your left fingertips overhead. And then on an inhale, we'll release our left hand to meet our right. Bring your right knee back to meet your left knee, coming into a tabletop. And then sink your hips back just for a puppy dog pose. Breathe. And then, as you know, with yoga, we're going to set up to do all those same things on the opposite side. So coming into hands and knees, walking our hands forward, one handprint, aligning our shoulders over our wrists. And if this is really modified plank, if that's where you want to be, it's perfectly okay to stay here. Otherwise, curl your toes, extend your legs long, coming into a full plank position. Building heat while still maintaining the integrity of your breath. Engage your core. Release your knees. Draw energy into the left side body. So coming onto your left hand, dropping your left knee, opening up your hips, opening up your heart, planting your right foot onto the mat so that your pinky toe edge of your foot is parallel with the side edge of your mat, and opening your right arm to the sky, coming into a modified side plank. Breathing, maybe even drawing your heart forward by bringing your right arm back a few inches, just looking to the sky, thinking about surrendering our heart, breathing into our lungs. Take a long inhale and then use your exhale to again lower your hips to the mat, drawing the sole of your left foot into your right inner groin, coming up off of your left hand, sweeping your left arm over your right leg for a side body stretch. Can you do this while keeping your heart open? Remember to keep your right leg active. And then when you're ready, begin to bring your left arm back, releasing it down to your mat and lifting your body back up into the modified side plank, coming onto your left knee, making any adjustments you need to for alignment here, and then drawing your right arm across your body, extending it to the sky for that long line of energy. Breathing into your entire being and thinking about that simultaneous praise and that simultaneous surrender, both giving and receiving. Release your arm, your right arm, to meet your left on the mat, bringing your knees back together in a tabletop pose. Maybe take a round of cat-cow to release your back, enjoying the movement of your spine. And again, sink your hips back to a puppy dog pose. Coming into your breath, letting it settle. And then when you're ready, begin to come up gently out of puppy dog pose and make your way into our first downward facing dog. So option to come there from hands and knees or coming all the way up from puppy dog. Downward facing dog. We lift our hips to the sky, pedaling out our feet, bending one knee then the other, maybe shaking our head out yes and no. Checking in, is your weight evenly distributed across your right hand and your left hand? Is your core engaged? Are your ears aligned between your biceps? Take a long inhale in through your nose and sigh it out through your mouth. On an inhale, look between your hands and hop, walk, or step your feet up in between your hands to come into a forward fold. If forward fold is something that messes with your blood pressure, if you have any of those kind of needs going on, always option to come into more of a halfway lift by bringing your hands above your knees and extending your spine long. So pause, notice your breath. Again, maybe release any tension from your jaw. Keeping a bend to your knees. On an inhale, lift halfway. Pressing your hands into the tops of your thighs, rolling your shoulders onto your back, maybe even squeezing your shoulder blades together and releasing that tension. Exhale, release. Inhale, rise to stand, extending your arms out open, bringing your hands together overhead, exhaling your hands to heart center. Pause. On an inhale, sweep your arms open to the sky again. Fold all the way through heart center, bringing your hands to the earth. Plant your hands. Step back to plank or modified plank. And this time we'll lower for just more of a traditional flow through, or you can meet us in downward facing dog. So for a traditional flow through, lowering your knees to the earth, lowering your chest to the earth, keeping your elbows hugged in, drawing them, your hands are next to your rib cage, releasing your chin, releasing your forehead, keeping your legs active, pressing the tops of your feet into the earth, engaging your core. Let your head and your heart be the last thing that comes up for a cobra pose. Exhale, release back to the mat. And then on an inhale, come to downward facing dog by either pressing your way there through a push-up or coming through hands and knees. Again, for the sake of instruction, I am going to turn, but on an inhale from downward facing dog, extend your right leg to the sky for three-legged dog. Pressing through your heel, keeping your hips squared to the mat. Maybe bend and point and flex your toe, rotate your ankle. Option to bend, twist, and open here. If you're taking the option, return to three-legged dog by squaring your hips to the mat and extending your right leg long. Look between your hands. Begin to draw your right knee in through your chest, stepping it between, planting your right foot between your right and left hands. Plant your left hand to the mat and begin to draw your right arm towards the sky, opening up for a twist. Bringing to mind the posture of heart opening. Keeping both legs active. Begin to release your right hand back to the outside of your right foot. Draw your left foot forward to meet your right. Go forward fold. Inhale to lift halfway. Exhale, release. Inhale, rise to stand, bringing your hands up all the way to the sky. Exhaling through heart center, folding all the way back down to the earth. And then planting your hands, stepping back to either plank for a flow through or coming in directly to downward facing dog. So your practice, your way. From downward facing dog, on an inhale, extend your left leg to the sky for three-legged dog. Again, remembering point and flex your foot, option to bend, twist, and open here. Return your left leg back to three-legged dog. Draw your left knee in through your chest. Step it forward through in between your right and left hands. Plant your left hand. Nope. Plant your right hand and come into a twist on the opposite side. I'm gonna get there. We learn every week how to be a virtual yoga teacher. It's a work in progress. On an exhale, return your left hand to the mat. Engage your core. Step your right foot forward to meet your left for forward fold. On an inhale, lift halfway. On an exhale, release your hands to the mat. On an inhale, rise to stand, sweeping your hands overhead. Exhaling your hands to heart center. Pausing here. Maybe closing your eyes or keeping your gaze down. Bringing to mind the notion of surrender. Bringing to mind Lent, this final week of Lent, coming to a close with Holy Week. And noticing if anything about surrender is coming up for you. What is God asking you to surrender? What is coming up in your heart that you lovingly need to surrender? And just taking a moment in prayer, offering that up to God in the same way Jesus offered his selfless surrender to us. And then inhale, sweep your arms open, slowly up to the sky. And then an exhale, we'll fold all the way through. Heart center, bringing your hands to the mat, coming down to hands and knees. And then from here, we're going to come into a hip opening pose. So I'm going to offer some modifications. You can stay right where you are, but I am turning on the mat. We're going to be coming into a frog pose. So if you have that rolled blanket that you used for supported fish pose, that could be something you use here for your knees. Another option would be to take your mat and fold it, and then you're going to bring your knees onto the folded edge of your mat. So you have several options. I'm going to use the blanket, but coming into frog pose, it's an intense hip opener. So option to pad your knees, and you're bringing them wide like you do in child's pose. But unlike child's pose, you're bringing your feet back. So if you can see, both of my feet are coming back like that. So my ankle is in alignment with my knee. The inner part of my foot, the insole, is along the floor, and I'm keeping my feet flexed. So you'll feel an intense stretch across both inner thighs, and you're keeping your feet active. And then from here, you might be like, this is good. This is where I want to stay for this frog pose. I am good, Christy. If you would like to deepen or intensify the stretch, you can then come onto elbows, or put your elbows on blocks, or even make a forehead pillow using your arms and bringing your head down. But just find a place where you can stay. As you know, with hip openers, we stay here for several rounds of breath. allowing our body to ease into the pose. So if you are on forearms, or if your head is down onto the mat, begin to come back up slowly onto your hands. And then to release the pose, we just slowly ease our way out. So begin to sink your hips back, begin to release your feet, slowly bringing your knees together, and then do something as a counter pose. So again, maybe it's coming into tabletop and extending your legs to three-legged table, or maybe making some hip circles. Just whatever you do both to your right and your left leg, maybe making some hip circles just in tabletop. Take something as a counter pose. And then when you're ready, we will come onto our backs. So we're going to be transitioning into our examine prayer. So from your back, if there is one more pose you would like to take, like a happy baby, or maybe bringing your knees, bending from each side, one side to the other in a spinal twist, maybe taking a bridge pose, that's something I would invite you to do right now. Also, if there's any props that you would want for Shavasana, like a blanket or extra clothing items, you can go ahead and get those now. Maybe grabbing your journal. Just make your way eventually onto your back. Letting your breath be easy and light. Noticing any choppiness, quickening of your pulse. And use the length of your inhale or your exhale to let your breath become slower, steadier, feeling the weight of your body melt onto the mat in a place of rest, in a place of support, in a place of healing, in a place of God's loving care. I will guide you through each step of the examine. In between each step, I will pause for reflection before I move on to the next step. If you feel you'd like to journal or you need more reflection time in between, feel free to pause the video and resume playing it to continue on through the guided meditation. After each step of the examine, I will read a prayer and then give you a few moments in traditional Shavasana before we close our practice. So our morning examine is from the resource godinallthings.com. I invite you to notice God's loving presence. When 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, we know that he is near, and in prayer we are a force to be reckoned with. Gratitude. Good morning. As you prepare to begin the day, your mind may not be as calm as you hope. Still, we ought to thank God for a new day with new opportunities for grace. Review. What are a few things you are grateful for? Good morning, God. I come to you as I am now, imperfect, tired, and hopeful. Thank you for my beating heart and my breathing lungs, which have given me yet another day in your creation. Desire. Desire is an important indicator in Ignatian spirituality. Just your desire for a moment with God indicates the presence of God within you right now as you go about your morning routine. As you begin to recognize this presence, ask yourself, what desires do I have for God today? Feelings. Now take a survey of your feelings right now. How did you sleep? Do you have any feelings of excitement or fears, anticipation that spilled over to the morning from yesterday? Are you feeling confident? Looking ahead. God knows your feelings well because God created you. Feelings happen to you. They do not define you. As you begin today, you go forth as God made you, loved with certain gifts and talents. This is your identity in God. With this in mind, do you anticipate any challenges today, good or bad? Colloquy or conversation. Now take your desires for today, your feelings right now, and the challenges you anticipate, and give them to God. What would be your one sentence to God right now as you face a new day? Speak it to God right now in the silence of your heart. With a spirit of renewal and trust, Let us end our examen with a prayer by Jesuit John Veltri. O God, I find myself at the beginning of another day. I do not know what it will bring. Please help me to be ready for whatever it may be. If I am to stand up, help me to stand bravely. If I am to sit still, help me to sit quietly. If I am to lie low, help me to do it patiently. If I am to do nothing, let me do it gallantly. I pray just for today, for these 24 hours, for the ability to cooperate with others according to the way Jesus taught us to live. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. May these words that he taught us become more than words. Please free my thinking and feelings and the thinking and feelings of others from all forms of self-will, self-centeredness, dishonesty, and deception. Along with my brothers and sisters, I need this freedom to make my choices today according to your desires. Send your Spirit to inspire me in time of doubt and indecision, so that together we can walk along your path. Amen. Allow your awareness to return to your breath. Perhaps begin making small movements with your hands and feet, your fingers and toes. Maybe hug your knees into your chest or take a full body stretch. When you're ready, gently make your way onto whichever side is calling to you this morning. Savoring another moment to simply rest in this prayerful, loving practice. Use the strength of your arms and legs to slowly will yourself up to a seated position on your mat, bringing your hands to heart center. Your gaze can be down, your eyes can remain closed. Draw your hands to your forehead. May God's word be on our minds. Lower your hands to your lips. May God's word be on our lips. And return your hands to heart center. May God's word be in our hearts. Our prayer and our practice are complete this morning. I offer love and gratitude and surrender to all of you for the upcoming Holy Week. We also pray to end this pandemic. As we bow to our God and one another and say, Namaste. Thank you for joining me for this Lenten series. very unexpected to begin it in the studio and now ending it virtually. As you know, with our studio being closed and with it being a small business, we are accepting donations on the Namaste website. So anything that you're able to give, I know we would greatly appreciate. Thank you for joining us.